Iran warns of regional conflict if US attacks, designates EU armies terrorists. Iran considers EU armies as terrorist groups in retaliatory move. Iran Parliament Speaker. Jeffrey Epstein's ties to politicians, business titans, and other figures. Trump says seeking $1 billion in damages from Harvard. Trump cuts India tariffs, says Modi will stop buying Russian oil. Iran warns of regional war, designates EU armies as terrorist groups amid standoff with US. Iran's leadership warned on Sunday that any US military attack would trigger a regional conflict, sharply escalating tensions with Washington, as the United States increases its naval presence in the Middle East. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said Iranians would not be intimidated by US threats, despite President Donald Trump ordering an aircraft carrier group and additional warships to the region. "We are not the initiators and do not want to attack any country, but the Iranian nation will strike a strong blow against anyone who attacks and harasses them," Khamenei said in remarks carried by state media. The US Navy now has 6 destroyers, 1 aircraft carrier and 3 littoral combat ships in the region, heightening fears of direct confrontation following Iran's violent crackdown in January on nationwide protests. EU designation of IRGC sparks retaliation. Tensions intensified after the European Union formally designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization in response to the protest crackdown. In retaliation, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf said Iran would classify EU member states' armies as terrorist groups, adding that lawmakers would consider expelling European military attachés. Iran designates EU armies as terrorist groups after bloc lists Revolutionary Guards. Iran considers the armies of European Union countries to be terrorist groups after the bloc designated the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Kalibaf said on Sunday. The European Union marked a symbolic shift in its approach to Iran on Thursday by adding the Revolutionary Guards to its terrorism list, following what has been described as the Islamic Republic's deadliest crackdown on protests since its establishment in 1979. By trying to hit the Revolutionary Guards, the Europeans actually shot themselves in the foot, and once again made a decision against the interests of their people by blindly obeying the Americans, Kalibaf told lawmakers, many of whom wore Guards uniforms in a show of support. According to Article 7 of the Law on Countermeasures against the designation of the Revolutionary Guards as a terrorist organization, the armies of European countries are considered terrorist groups, he said. Kalibaf added that Iran's Parliamentary National Security Commission would deliberate on the possible expulsion of EU member states, military attachés, and follow up the matter with the Foreign Ministry. The US Justice Department has released millions of internal documents related to the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, shedding further light on his ties to prominent figures in politics, finance, academia, and business, both before and after his 2008 guilty plea to prostitution charges involving an underage girl. Epstein was arrested again in 2019 on federal charges of sex trafficking of minors. He died later that year in a Manhattan jail cell in what authorities ruled a suicide. The Justice Department has cautioned that the newly released material may contain fabricated images, unverified claims, or pornographic content, and said on Sunday it had removed several thousand documents that inadvertently revealed identifying information about victims. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the files do not constitute evidence of criminal sexual activity by individuals named in the documents. Below are some of the high-profile figures whose names appear in the released material. Donald Trump. Donald Trump socialized with Epstein in the 1990s and early 2000s. He was quoted in a magazine profile from that period as saying Epstein liked women, on the younger side. Documents released by the Justice Department include photographs of Trump with several women whose faces are redacted, as well as a suggestive note to Epstein framed by the outline of a naked woman that appears to bear Trump's signature. Evidence and testimony introduced during the 2021 trial of Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell indicate that Trump traveled on Epstein's plane multiple times. In one email, Epstein wrote that Trump knew about the girls, though the meaning of the remark is unclear. Trump has denied any knowledge of Epstein's crimes, says he severed ties in the early 2000s, before Epstein's 2008 plea deal, and denies ever flying on Epstein's plane. He has also said the suggestive note was forged. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday that his administration would seek $1 billion in damages from Harvard University, escalating a confrontation with the Ivy League institution after reports that negotiations between the two sides had stalled. "We are now seeking $1 billion in damages and want nothing further to do into the future with Harvard University," Trump wrote on his Truth Social platform. The statement followed a report by New York Times earlier on Monday, saying that Harvard had secured some concessions from the government in ongoing settlement talks, including the apparent dropping of an earlier demand for a $200 million payout. Trump administration officials have accused Harvard and other elite universities of promoting what they describe as woke ideology and of failing to adequately protect Jewish students during pro-Palestinian campus protests. The administration has filed legal complaints and sought large financial penalties, a campaign critics describe as an effort to pressure liberal academic institutions. Trump said negotiations with Harvard had previously included discussion of a $500 million settlement, which he said would have involved opening trade schools. He rejected that proposal as insufficient. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that the United States and India have agreed to a bilateral trade deal that will lower U.S. tariffs on Indian goods and signal a shift in energy ties, following a call with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday, the 3rd of February. Key elements of the announced deal include down triangle tariff reductions. The U.S. will reduce its reciprocal tariff on Indian exports to 18% from levels previously as high as 50%, comprising a 25% baseline tariff plus an extra 25% penalty tied to India's purchases of Russian oil. Oil drum energy commitments. Trump claimed that Modi agreed to stop buying Russian oil and instead increase purchases of oil from the United States and potentially Venezuela, a shift he linked to efforts to help end Russia's war in Ukraine. A White House official confirmed that the punitive 25% tariff linked to Russian oil purchases would also be dropped under the agreement. Package market access. Trump said India would move toward reducing its tariffs and non-tariff barriers on U.S. imports to zero, though full details and timelines have not yet been published. Upward trend, broader trade and investment. Trump framed the deal as part of deeper cooperation, including large purchases of U.S. products across energy, technology, agriculture, and other sectors, figures the administration has described in the hundreds of billions of dollars.